The market is a sea of red as escalation in the West Asia conflict disrupts global supply chains. Metals, PSU, banks are the biggest losers along with energy stocks. CNBC TV 18 learns that Gujarat Gas is slashing supplies to industrial customers. Other city gas distributors may also need to trim flows as imports from the Middle East, especially Qatar, are disrupted. Shares of L&T are extending their losses as its high West Asia exposure ups fears of execution delays. Rice exporter KRBL hopes for a quick end to the conflict as the region accounts for 60 to 65% of the Indian rice exports, and this is peak season. The rupee falls nearly 1% against the dollar, touching new all-time lows of 92.3 following a sharp rise in crude prices and the dollar index and on huge foreign selling of Indian equities. Experts say that a $10 rise in crude prices can have a 0.5% additional impact on India's current account deficit. Good afternoon, you're with us here on Business Lunch. We are coming to you live from the CNBC TV 18 Motilal Oswal studios. I'm Hormuz Fatakia. It's not a pretty looking screen, but if you are an optimist, you would want to say that the Nifty is off 100 points from the lows of the day. But then the other determining factor for today's session is that every intraday recovery that you have seen, as you can see on the chart as well, has been sold into very swiftly. So 450 points lower currently is where the index stands, 24,420. Today's intraday low being 24,305. So still 100 points off the lows of the day, but still a 1.8% cut on the index. 11 lakh crore worth of investor wealth wiped out in today's session, at least as of now. And that's been the story of the market in today's session. Barely any stocks in the green. Coal India, Infosys among a few bucking the trend, but it is all a sea of red on the index, be it L&T, be it the index heavyweights. Reliance Industries is recovering from the lows of the day, and that is what has kept a lid on any further pressure on the Nifty. And that's been the story of the index, but it is the broader markets where the fall is even worse. So if you take a look at the stocks in the broader markets, the Nifty 500, only 457 stocks are in the red and 37 stocks are in the green. All 11 stocks on the Nifty Bank down, all 15 on the Nifty Auto down, all 14 on the Nifty Metal down, all 12 on the PSU Bank Index down, and all 10 on the Realty Index down as well. So most of the others trading with losses. The only segments that are bucking the trend today are, of course, defense. Some of the defense names like the likes of Paras Defense, Solar Industries, they are the ones that are doing well. And sugar stocks, be it Balrampur Chini, Praj Industries, Dhampur Sugar, all of them are the ones that are doing well in today's trading session. So barring these two, most of the others continuing to trade with losses. But beginning the show with the latest updates on the West Asia conflict as the tensions continue to escalate with the war entering the 5th day now. Israeli Israeli and US forces continue to pound targets across Iran, prompting Iranian retaliatory strikes across the Gulf as the conflict spread to Lebanon as well. Now, Israel also reports intercepting the latest barrage of missiles from Iran. The Iranian drones have struck near the region, near the US consulate in Dubai. This is after the US embassy in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait were also hit in the previous days. Washington has shut both the embassies as well as its embassy in Lebanon and ordered non-emergency government personnel and their families to leave much of West Asia. Meanwhile, passengers scramble to leave West Asia as flight disruptions continue across the region. And that's the situation that's unfolding in West Asia as of now. Winnie joins in with all the updates from what Donald Trump had to say overnight in our segment Trump Watch. Winnie.
Hi, good afternoon. So a lot of commentary that's coming from President Donald Trump. Now, first one, he's talking about the Truth Social post that he said. The US President Donald Trump said that the country's Navy will protect ships in West Asia if necessary in a bid to stop energy supply crunch sparked by the US-Israel war with Iran. Now, President Trump also has said that the government will provide risk insurance at a very reasonable price to all shipping firms in the region to ensure free flow of energy to the world. Moving on to some other commentary that came in, President Donald Trump said that Spain was very uncooperative and acted like a terrible ally after it declined to allow US forces to use the Spanish base for strikes on Iran. Now, he said that US is going to cut off all trade and directed Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to cut off all dealings with the country. Trump's comments actually came in during his press conference, White House press conference that was going on with the German Chancellor as well. Listening to what he had to say.
Spain has been very, very uncooperative, and so has UK. Now, the second one is shocking, but this is not the age of Churchill. I will say the UK has been very, very uncooperative with that stupid island that they have, that they gave away and took a 100-year lease, having to do with perhaps indigenous people claiming the island. Spain has been terrible. In fact, I told Scott to cut off all dealings with Spain. Spain, first of all, it started when every European nation, at my request, paid 5%, which they should be doing. And everybody was enthusiastic about it, Germany, everybody. And Spain didn't do it. And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases. And that's all right, we could use their base if we want. We could just fly in and use it. Nobody's going to tell us not to use it. But we don't have to. But they were unfriendly. And so I told him, we don't want to, Spain has absolutely nothing that we need other than great people. They have great people, but they don't have great leadership. And as you know, they were the only country that in NATO would not agree to go up to 5%. I don't think they would have agreed to go up to anything. They wanted to keep it at 2%, and they don't pay the 2%. So we're going to cut off all trade with Spain.
And as this fight between US and Iran rages, US President Donald Trump says that the exiled son of Iran's toppled Shah is not someone that his administration has considered in debt to take over Iran. Listen in.
I guess he is. Some people like him, and we haven't been thinking about too much about that. It would seem to me that somebody from within maybe would be more appropriate. I've said that. He looks like a very nice person, but it would seem to me that somebody that's there, that's currently popular, if there's such a person, but we have people like that. We have people that were more moderate. You know, these were radical lunatics, and you know what they get? They get nothing. All they do is kill people.
Vinny, thank you for that. And you heard the US President there on Iran and a host of other issues. And he also said that the Iran operation can extend beyond 4 to 5 weeks if needed. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that the war against Iran may take some time, but not years.
Peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia would be really possible and probably very close once this thing happens. So this is a gateway for peace, for a broader peace, and I believe that we can achieve it. I said it could be quick and decisive. It may take some time, but it's not going to take years. It's not an endless war. In fact, it's an effort right now to achieve the peace that we all yearn and pray for. And I think together we'll achieve it.
We'll take a short break. More news and updates follow on the other side. Stay tuned. Well, there is some recovery, if you would like to call it that. The Nifty is back at 25,450 now as we speak. There's still a 400-point cut nonetheless, but from gaps of 500 and 550 points, the 400-point cut is still there. So there's some recovery from the lows for the currency, for the index. But what has not recovered, though, is the currency. And that is now trading at new record lows against the dollar, the 92.3. Now the new level on fears of costlier crude prices and other imports as well. Lata is joining in with more on this. Lata.
Well, the war could not have come at a worse time for the Indian rupee. although the Indian economy itself has been showing higher than expected growth and lower than feared inflation, the external front has been wobbly because of poor capital flows. Now with the West Asian war, today itself, as if to account for the holiday, the currency is the worst performing. It has fallen about 0.75%. 92.3 is the new low that has been set. 92.3 rupees per dollar. Now, the causes are obvious. I mean, we are huge crude importers and crude price is 10% higher than what it was. In fact, more. It's about 12% higher than what it was last week, while the dollar index itself has spiked 2%. So that makes the landed crude much more expensive for us. The rupee is also, accounting for the 1 day of lack of trade. The demand for dollars is coming all round. FPIs have been selling hand over fist, so they are buying dollars and repatriating. There are importers who are scurrying to buy lest the dollar become even more expensive. And the Reserve Bank had been selling, in the NDF market, and the 1 month forward sales kind of mature. That creates a demand for dollars today. That has been happening consistently. So there is genuine all-round demand for dollars and a fear that things might only get worse from a rupee point of view. The Reserve Bank is the only one on the other side supplying dollars. The chatter on the street is that maybe on Monday they supplied as much as $5 billion. And today as well, they're big suppliers, though usually the Reserve Bank doesn't stand in the way when there is a global, dollar surge and, fall in all EM currencies. I just want to tell you that this problem is severe for India on the external front because a $10 rise in the cost of crude can push up the current account deficit by about 35, at least half a percentage point, according to economists. Now, of course, it is higher by $10 only for a few days. This is a calculation for the year. But the problem is important because from the balance of payments point of view, even in the third quarter, the numbers we got on Monday showed that the balance of payments deficit, which means current account deficit plus capital account deficit, the total deficit came in for 1 quarter at $24 billion. The market was prepared for $20 billion. So, things are worse than the market is prepared for. And therefore, we'll have to watch this very carefully. It doesn't look like the end of the problem at all from an Indian point of view.
Well, not ending anytime soon. Well, Lata, thank you for that. Just since we're on the subject of the dollar, just observing the dollar index, and in just a matter of 15 to 20 minutes, there has been a 40 cents correction in the dollar index. So from the highs of 99.33, the dollar index has now moved to 98.91 as we speak. So as at 99.01. So that's the kind. So the dollar index has turned negative. Earlier it was positive. It was moving towards the 99.5 mark, and now it has cooled off from the highs of the day ever so slightly. And Brent too, after hitting levels of 84 intraday, has seen a small 10-cent odd fall from the highs. It's 83.93 now is where Brent currently stands, still 3% higher, and the NYMEX nearing 77. And since we are on crude, as prices spike, what could be the impact on the Indian economy? Ritu has looked at some historical precedents to get an idea of what's in store for us. Ritu.
Oil and geopolitics have a long, consistent history, and the Iran-Israel-US conflict is just the latest factor at play. Brent crude prices surged 8% in a single session on Monday, the sharpest one-day move in more than 4 years. And again today, it is up, rallying 12% in 2 sessions. The screen tells you everything you need to know on how oil prices have reacted to wars. The Gulf War, for instance, took oil from $17 to a barrel to $46. The Ukraine-Russia conflict similarly to $139 a barrel, and so on. So every crisis has spiked oil prices. Most normalized within weeks. The Arab Spring, though, was the one exception when oil stayed above $100 for more than 3 years. So the question this time, as always, is how long? Now, for India, every oil shock also has a rupee echo as well. And we've already seen the rupee hit a record low in trade today. And that was not a coincidence. This is a pattern that has repeated every single time oil prices have spiked. The Gulf War, rupee devalued to 24.58 to the dollar. The global financial crisis of 2008, it fell to 51.75. Ukraine war, it crossed 80. So from 17 rupees in 1991 to more than 92 rupees today, every oil crisis compresses into months what would have otherwise taken years. Now, as for the impact on India's macros, MK estimates that every $10 per barrel sustained rise will widen India's current account deficit by 0.5% of the GDP, hit retail inflation by 35 basis points, WPI by 130 basis points, and clip the GDP growth by 15 to 20 basis points. Nomura says every 10% crude rise worsens the CAD by 0.4% of the GDP. Inflation could be sharply impacted. HDFC Bank calls FY27, and I quote, a matrix of ifs and buts. Elara Capital says $90 oil alone adds 0.3 to 0.4 percentage points to the FY27 CAD baseline. So how exposed is India? According to government sources, India has 25 days of crude and petroleum stocks. LNG is comfortable for 2 to 3 weeks, LPG for 25 to 30 days. Critically, 40% of India's supplies are routed through the Strait of Hormuz and 60% comes from elsewhere, which is our buffer. But the structural vulnerability is real given India imports most of its crude oil. But India's forex reserves also stand at $723.61 billion, the strongest cushion India has ever carried into a crisis of this kind. Now, if this turns out to be a short conflict, India is well insulated. But in case of a prolonged conflict, our current account deficit widens, the rupee will stay under pressure, inflation risks will build up, and the RBI's rate path will get complicated.
Ritu, thank you for that update there. We're speaking about stocks that are not doing well. There is one particular segment that is bleeding as well today, and that are the gas companies. Like Petronet LNG is down 10%, GAIL's down 7%, and that's because of the conflict in West Asia has intensified. Sonal is here with more details on this. Sonal.
When we talk about such conflicts or impact on imports, it's more about crude oil, but there is a bigger impact on gas supplies as well, and that is exactly what is hitting these stocks. Now remember, Gujarat Gas, sources have suggested that the company has gone ahead, they've cut their industrial supplies by 50%. Now that's a big impact, and they say it's because of the conflicts that's happening in West Asia that our LNG supplies are impacted, and that is the reason. IGL and MGL will also follow suit according to sources, but of course the cut will not be as big because they don't have such a big industrial exposure. Nevertheless, remember Qatar over the weekend announced that they will be doing production cuts, and that is something which will impact India because out of the 50% total imports of gas that we do, 40 to 50% come in from Qatar itself, and that is something which will impact the consumers and industries as well. If you're talking stock specific, let's talk about Citi's note, because they say this will be a risk for India's gas value chain because it supplies 40 to 50% of India's LNG, making replacement difficult amid rising gas prices. We saw them surge 1 to 2 times over the weekend and since the time the conflict has started. Petronet LNG could face volume risk as Qatar accounts for around 50% of its total volumes. GAIL could see impact on transmission volumes as well. However, they do have other segments to see some diversification. Gujarat Gas has the biggest exposure to this particular import, and that is why margins could see a squeeze, volumes could see an impact. Kotak says that it is around roughly 20% of the total petroleum transport, right? India will face elevated exposure, and we just have strategic reserves for crude of around 8 to 9 days. For gas, it is barely nothing, and that is something which could impact final consumption. For refiners, there could be a margin increase, but again, there will be transportation costs which would go higher. So there's a lot happening, and that is something which could impact these gas suppliers, gas refiners, and oil producers as well.
And that's showing up on the charts as well. Barring Gujarat Gas, most of the others are not doing very well in today's session. IGL is down 5, MGL is down 8, and Petronet, of course, down 10%. Sonal, thank you for sharing that update with us. Take a short break. More news and updates follow on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, as tensions in West Asia continue to intensify, the US Senate is poised to vote later today on President Donald Trump's decision to embark on a war against Iran. Kevin Frey is here with the latest update.
Yeah, that War Powers resolution is teed up for a vote in the Senate for Wednesday. At least that's what we're tracking right now. And at this moment, it's not clear if it will garner enough support to pass. There will need to be a handful of Republicans that join with Democrats to advance it. But at the end of the day, even if it does, it's not going to be a veto-proof majority, which means at the end of the day, the president can essentially ignore this, though this, of course, would assert some effort by lawmakers to try to rein in the president as he pursues this ongoing action against Iran. Meanwhile, there is still an intense desire among lawmakers for answers to explain exactly what the president is doing and what the justification is. There were briefers on the Hill on Tuesday from the Trump administration, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He, speaking to reporters before that briefing, pushed back on this assertion he made earlier in the week that Israel had essentially forced the U.S.'s hand, saying instead that the president was just trying to make sure that America was not going to get first. Of course, the administration, though, continues to provide shifting explanations as to why they launched this attack, from regime change to ending any nuclear efforts by Iran to causing issues with their munitions. Coming out of that briefing, though, Democrats roundly concerned as to what the future holds. Here's Senator Chuck Schumer, top Democrat in the Senate.
The American people do not want an endless war. The administration doesn't seem to know what it's doing. Every hour there's a different rationale as to why we're doing this. And America wants this president to pay attention to the problems at home, not the problems overseas.
Other senators I spoke with suggested they are concerned about mission creep, that this could last longer than the few weeks that the Trump administration has advertised. Meanwhile, many Republicans are simply suggesting that they are in lockstep with the president. They saw this as a threat that had to be addressed and seem to believe that this will only last a few weeks.
We take a leave on this edition of Business Lunch. The last 5 minutes have seen some positive developments taking place. The Nifty is 150 points off the lows of the day. Crude prices have come off slightly from the highs. The dollar is cooling off as well. Mid-cap radar takes the action forward on the other side. Thank you so much for watching.